Over the last few months, some people have started to notice Donald's blatant disregard for human life. Yes, they've noticed that it's on full display. Really, just over the last few months. Fascinating. You know how long I've been noticing it? Since like the Pleistocene era. But, that's me. As the Trump regime ramps up its mass deportations of migrants to El Salvador's infamous mega prisons, even some of Donald's high profile supporters are starting to sound the alarm. Take a look.
You got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting like lassoed up and deported and sent to like El Salvador prisons, like that kind of shit.
When you do things quickly and you do things aggressively, that's how you get shit done. But that's also when mistakes get made.
Right.
And I think a human being being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once.
Mm.
Yeah.
This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific. And that's bad for the cause. Like the cause is let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs. And then like how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective, and this is where I think it gets quite sinister, is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen.
But
right?
That is horrible.
So someone ends up in a...
Wow, welcome to Earth One, guys. Where have you been? What Rogan is referring to here is the fact that innocent people are mistakenly being identified as gang members and they're being swept up and deported without any due process whatsoever and without ICE even knowing for a fact whether or not they are who ICE claims they are. The gay hairdresser Rogan was referring to is actually a makeup artist, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, who was deported based on a crown tattoo. That sounds reasonable. Romero is described as a kind, creative soul who was an active member in his church drama troupe. I have one question here. Joe, when did you start paying attention? Seriously, because if this is the first inkling of what Donald Trump and the sycophants and the fascists with whom he surrounds himself are capable of, you clearly haven't been paying attention. So you're telling me that the disappearing, essentially, of people who are here legally for no reason other than, I don't know, their brown skin and the fascist border czar, Tom Homan, is a fascist who likes to destroy people's lives. You're telling me that was your first clue that all was not well? Hundreds of thousands of unnecessary COVID deaths? That wasn't a red flag for you? How about this one? Remember the thousands of children who were kidnapped, separated from their parents, and put in camps? And I don't mean summer camps. I mean the kind of camps you don't want anybody being sent to. That you don't remember that? Like that was not a bridge too far for you? Don't get me wrong. I'm really glad you're waking up now because sadly, despite the fact that you're a moron, people listen to you. Or maybe that's why they listen to you. I don't know. So I guess, welcome to the club. Better late than never, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe not, because it may be too late. Anyway, that was only one example of the kind of people who have been grabbed without warning. And again, without being charged with anything other than some fantasies ICE agents have constructed about these people simply because of the color of their skin or they don't like their tattoos. Here's some more men who've been wrongfully detained and sent to El Salvador. There's Franco Tiapa, 26, from Venezuela, who was simply deported for having a tattoo. Daniel Camargo, a 20-year-old asylum seeker, deported for a tattoo of his daughter's name and praying hands. Wow, that sounds scary. Neri Borges, a Dallas man, was arrested and deported because of an autism awareness tattoo for his brother. Nefarious. Luis Carlos Jose Marcano Silva, A 26-year-old barber was detained at an immigration hearing in Miami last month based on a tattoo of Jesus of Nazareth and his daughter's name. SHREDS Barrios, a former footballer, was deported based on a tattoo of a soccer ball with a crown on top of it in honor of his favorite soccer team, Real Madrid. Francisco Cacique, deported for tattoos that say, quote unquote, live in the moment and family. That sounds innocent, doesn't it? Ah, yes. But the tattoos were in Spanish. His family has published evidence that he has no criminal background whatsoever. The Trump regime has given itself the authority swiftly to deport Venezuelan migrants accused of being part of a violent street gang based primarily on whether they have tattoos or wear clothing associated with the gang, according to new court filings. Court documents submitted this past weekend show that lawyers for the Venezuelan migrants presented a government document, the quote, alien enemy validation guide, unquote, which outlines the criteria officials must follow to designate someone as a member of Tren de Aragua, which is the gang that the Trump regime is claiming all of these people belong to and which they have erroneously labeled a terrorist organization. I can think of terrorist organizations that the Trump regime won't mention to you, probably because they're part of it, and that would be the January 6th insurrectionists. But, they're in charge of everything, so they can get away with that. These are some of the qualifications that ICE is using to confirm gang members' identities. Section 2E says, subject displays insignia, logos, notations, drawings, or dress known to indicate allegiance to TDA as observed by law enforcement in person or via virtual mediums. And by the way, the plural for medium is media. This is pretextual. These people are making this shit up because it's hard. It's hard to find immigrants, undocumented workers, who are the kinds of criminals they claim have swarmed our country. The ones coming in from the insane asylums, the guys who used to hang out with Hannibal Lecter. Immigrants in this country are far more likely to commit crimes than Donald Trump, which is to say, sorry, everybody in this country is less likely to commit crimes than Donald Trump, which is saying very little because he's such a prolific criminal. Immigrants and undocumented workers in this country, for what should be obvious reasons, are much less likely to commit crimes than the average American. Why? Because doing so would get them quickly deported, would get them in trouble in a way that American would not get in trouble. So that's obvious on its face. However, the Trump regime has a quota. They claim that they were put into office specifically for the purposes for being as cruel as humanly possible. The people with brown skin in this country, especially if they're in this country and not documented. However, not only are they running out of criminals to find, they're also running out of undocumented workers because many of these people are actually here legally. They have the documents. So many men have been detained and sent to El Salvador, many of whom, again, have zero criminal offenses simply because some ICE agent didn't understand the significance of the tattoo on their brown skin. Hey, why look it up? Why look at pictures? Why do any research whatsoever? That takes so much time. And you know what? It's so much more fun to exercise your petty power and just grab people off the street because you don't like the way they look. Honestly, at this point, the American people are beginning to lose track of how often this is going on. And you know what? ICE is losing track too. Take a look.
The Trump administration acknowledged in a court filing yesterday it inadvertently deported a Maryland man to El Salvador because of an administrative error, but that U.S. courts are powerless to order his return. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a Salvadorian national who came to the U.S. at the age of 16 in 2011 after fleeing gang threats in his native land. According to Politico, he was deemed by an immigration judge in 2019 to be a likely member of the MS-13 gang, a decision he sharply contested and that the government credited to information gleaned from a confidential informant. But the court also agreed at the time that he should not be deported to El Salvador, finding that his fear of being persecuted or tortured was credible. On Monday, attorneys for the government admitted that Abrego Garcia was deported accidentally.
Oops. Despite the mistake, if that's indeed what it was, and I have no reason to believe them, the Trump regime claims it cannot retrieve him because he's no longer in U.S. custody and the government has no power to act, to which I say, bullshit. Bullshit. You have a financial relationship with the president of El Salvador. If you want somebody back, you will get that person back. You just don't. The family has sued, demanding the United States take responsibility and stop funding his detention abroad. Court documents revealed that Abrego Garcia has no criminal record, was raising a young child, and had checked in regularly with immigration authorities as he was told to do, until he was removed suddenly without any notice at all. This appears to be the first instance in which the administration has admitted to errors related to the deportation of Salvadoran and Venezuelan nationals. But, they're only doing that in court because otherwise that would be perjury. When public facing, the Trump regime shows absolutely no remorse whatsoever. Play the clip.
No, according to the Department of Homeland Security and the agents, have you talked to the agents who have been putting their lives on the line to detain these foreign terrorists who have been terrorizing our communities? TDA is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women. And our agents on the front lines take deporting these people with the utmost seriousness, and there is a litany of criteria that they use to ensure that these individuals qualify as foreign terrorists and to ensure that they qualify for deportation. And the president made it incredibly clear to the American public that there would be a mass deportation campaign of not just foreign terrorists, but also illegal criminal aliens who have been wreaking havoc on American communities. And shame on you and shame on the mainstream media for trying to cover for these individuals who have. This is a vicious gang, Andrew. This is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women.
The government filed in court, which says all.
And you said yourself there are 8 criteria on that document.
They need 8 points.
And you are questioning the credibility of these agents who are putting their life on the line to protect your life and the life of everybody in this group and everybody across the country. And their credibility should be questioned. They finally have a president who is allowing them to do their jobs, and God bless them for doing it.
Fuck you. I am so tired of her. I don't want to listen to this person anymore. All she does is lie so horrifically that it is not worth it anymore. I'm sick to death of it. Yes, they're putting their lives on the line. What? By arresting soccer dads and people who are in their church's acting troupe and hairdressers? Are you kidding me? ICE agents at this point, they're just the brown shirts of the Trump regime. They're not putting their lives on the line for anything. They're getting off on their little petty power. That's what's happening here. They're not following any rules. They're doing whatever the fuck they want. Oh, look, a brown person who has a tattoo. Must be a gang member. They aren't gang members. So her entire premise is out the window. And just for the record, you fucking idiot, the word criteria is plural. After being called out by John Favreau of Pod Save America on Twitter for the egregious error committed by the Trump regime, so-called Vice President J.D. Vance decided to gaslight Americans because he's been learning at the knee of his master. Who would that be? Is that Donald or Elon Musk? Or Putin? Or Peter Thiel? I don't know. He has so many. So, this is what Vance wrote. Quote, "My comment is that according to the court document you apparently didn't read, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. My further comment is that it's gross to get fired up about gang members getting deported while ignoring citizens they victimize," unquote. Really? That's what we're doing? We're ignoring that? You know what you're doing? You're ignoring the fact that you yourself are part of a terrorist organization because you are an insurrectionist who supported an insurrection and you support the guy who incited the insurrection. So I don't want to hear any more about domestic terrorists from you vile anti-American people. You believe in nothing, nothing at all. You have no sense of basic human decency, and you are completely okay with letting all of this unfold. Why? Why? Because it scares people. It puts a chill into people's ability to live their lives. And you don't want people feeling safe in this country. The other thing, sorry to put it this way, but it's pretty obvious. You guys get off on this. You get off on it because all that makes you tick is seeing other people, or I should say, being responsible for other people suffering horribly at your hands. So all of this is wrong. All of this is un American, unconstitutional, and it is absolutely deteriorating the separation of powers. Right now, as far as the Trump regime is concerned, the judicial branch, that allegedly co equal branch of government, is a joke. And they don't need to listen to judges' orders, do they? This is all costing us millions of dollars as well, which, quite honestly, to me is the least important part of it. But you know what? For anybody out there concerned about the price of eggs, this should matter to you. Since March 15, 2025, the Trump regime has escalated its immigration crackdown by deporting alleged criminals to El Salvador's Seco mega prison, as we mentioned. But it's not that simple. U.S. efforts to manage the southwestern border and detention operations at Guantanamo Bay have totaled nearly $300 million, and that is according to a U.S. official. Of that total, almost $40 million has been spent on deportation flights and detention operations at Guantanamo Bay. Currently, only a small number of deported migrants are being held at the Guantanamo Bay facility. Then we have the cost to the American people for Donald's illegal Venezuelan deportations. Branded as a quote unquote counterterrorism operation, the move includes a $6 million payment to El Salvador to detain 238 Venezuelan men, averaging $25,000 per detainee, a figure the White House boasts is at a 43% discount compared to U.S. prison costs. Is that how we're doing this now? Right? Well, you know. So what? Human rights violations? That's okay. It's cheaper. It's cheaper. Also, why are we sending Venezuelan citizens to El Salvador? Just out of curiosity. Deportation flights use military aircraft with disabled transponders. Can't imagine why. Increasing concerns over secrecy and the use of military resources in civilian immigration enforcement. That's right. This is not, and should not be anyway, a military operation. What in God's name is the U.S. military doing having anything to do with the deportation of immigrants, which is a civil matter? A federal judge issued an emergency order mandating that deportees receive a fair opportunity to seek humanitarian protection, though the administration has provided no proof of compliance. Yeah, that's my point. Who's going to make them? Truly, who's going to make them? I don't know. I have lost count of how many acts of contempt this administration's lawyers, this administration's DOJ lawyers have committed in open court. And not just actual contempt, but the contempt they demonstrate towards judges, the contempt they demonstrate for due process, for knowledge. These are among the most incompetent, degraded people ever to work for the DOJ. And in one fell swoop, they're destroying their credibility and the credibility of a once storied institution. It used to be an honor to work at the DOJ, like the pinnacle of a lifetime, the pinnacle of a career. And now, the worst of the worst are arguing these cases in court in front of judges who are just absolutely shocked to find how ill prepared and how contemptuous they are of the judge, of the process, of their own incompetence, and the rule of law. So, one thing I really do hope happens, I mean, obviously it's not going to happen during the Trump regime, but, Democrats ever get into power, I really hope this country joins the International Criminal Court, because I would like nothing more. Well, maybe there are things I would like more, but this one I can say out loud, than for people like Donald Trump and JD Vance and Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to be dragged in their orange jumpsuits and leg irons and handcuffs to The Hague, which is quite honestly better than they deserve. Since Donald clearly has no problem wasting taxpayer money, because it's not his, let's put this deportation horror into perspective, especially compared to how much he's blown on his favorite pastime, which he has to cheat at because he's so bad at it. I mean, you could call it his job, I think, because he spends more time doing it than anything else other than maybe signing executive orders with that fucking Sharpie of his. Golf. Yes, I'm talking about golf. Since the Trump regime began on January 20th of this year, American taxpayers, and again, for those of you who cared so much about the price of eggs, this should also bother you. American taxpayers have spent, over $26 million on his golf outings at his golf courses. Mar-a-Lago and the one in New Jersey, New Bedford, I think it's called. This amount covers more than a quarter of his first 69 days in office. A HuffPost analysis based on a 2019 Government Accountability Office report reveals that the total cost of these golf trips has reached $26,127,531. The expenses include transporting his motorcade, security personnel, and the exorbitant cost of flying Air Force One, which is probably made more expensive by the extra weight of all of those classified documents he's continuing to steal. So this is where we are right now. This is a lawless regime that is absolutely unaccountable to anybody, including the other two formerly co-equal branches of government. Now, with Congress, that's because the Republicans who are in charge of that have abdicated all of their constitutional responsibilities willingly and handed them over to the executive branch, because I truly believe they want to make their insane dream of a unitary executive come true, even if that person is Donald Trump, the stupidest human who ever lived, who was so degraded emotionally and psychologically, so deluded that he actually thinks he's a smart person who knows anything about anything. And then, of course, there's the judicial branch, which, at some levels is trying its level best to hold this regime accountable, at least a little bit. But it takes too long. It takes too long to do that. And many of these judges, even if the rulings are correct, they do not understand the moment in which we live. Justice grinds slow but fine. We don't have time for this anymore. We don't have time to give prosecutors who have nothing but contempt for the process second, third, and fourth chances. How many instances of contempt do we need to see before a judge stands up and says enough and no more, and actually does something? Will it change anything? Maybe not, but maybe it will put the DOJ on notice that they can't fuck around anymore. I don't know, but what I do know for sure is that continuing to do nothing, continuing to act as if this is all normal, continuing to act as if in 2025 in the United States of America, disappearing people is just fine with us, is as far away from who we thought we were than it's possible for me to imagine. And yet, here we are. please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.